when you're younger, right, you just do it, and you do it well, and you're not in your own way. And maybe there's a certain arrogance of not really thinking about it. And then with maybe some measure of success and wanting to, trying to understand why you do it well, you start to piss in the soup.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Bertie Carvel is an actor. He sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work. When you land a new role, do you have a typical first step that you take to kind of wrap your arms around how to play the character?
I guess that even before landing the role, usually, unless it's a straight offer, which is an interesting thing in itself, because when that happens, I feel that's very validating and empowering, actually, and can open up. Sorry, you didn't ask this, but can open up, can really back you to make bold choices, which I love to do. But also no one's actually seen it. So you can also feel weirdly stressed because you haven't done anything to earn your right to be there.
Right.
But unless it's, even in that case, and you're deciding whether to do it, the very first thing always is to keep on reading it and hearing it and sort of letting it, take root in your imagination, I guess, my imagination. So that would be it for me. I guess I read it and trust my instinct about whatever. I like to feel that I have some spark of an idea, and I've learnt to trust that I can't always articulate that idea like, oh, I know, I'll do him with a wooden leg, which I have done, by the way. I keep saying that, but I've actually I'll tell you about that later. So to kind of learn to trust whatever it is, I've learned to trust when I think I can be good in something, which isn't to say that I couldn't be good in something without that feeling. And sometimes I've tried to grow by not needing that surety in my belly, but most often it's trying to read it until I find that, and then just holding on to that feeling and keeping going in that direction, if that doesn't sound too and then I guess I have a bunch of processes which are ways of articulating that instinct, which are more kind of which is the side of the brain that's meant to be kind of logical and rational. Is it
I forget. I always forget
one it is. I think in many ways I come across, my process is on that kind of organized side, but actually it's just me trying to organize or tools I've gathered that are just ways of making sure I'm holding true to that left brain or right brain, whatever the other thing is, that instinctive thing. Yes. And just making sure that if it's challenged, I can, I guess, back it up to myself, not to someone else. I'm not going to be like, oh, but the action I've done for this scene is blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to sort of quote that back to someone else, but I just need to reassure myself that I was right to back myself in the first place.
Does that ever get less hard to prove to yourself over time? Or is it just the same amount of effort that is needed as when you first started?
I'm making it sound really effortful, actually, and it isn't. When I started, kind of by accident, fell into a play at university and realised I'd been acting forever because my childhood hobby was something called live role playing, which is basically chasing each other around in caves and woods, pretending to be elves, dwarves and goblins and hitting each other with rubber swords is essentially what it is, and casting spells at each other. But basically it's telling stories and it's acting for no audience, which was an amazing training. And then I wound up doing play and thought, I do this every weekend. There's just nobody paying to watch. And it felt amazing to go, that's worth something to someone. But so to your question, at that point, I wasn't thinking about actions and units and all of that stuff. And I had to go to drama school to learn that stuff even existed. And then I guess I started doing it because I'd been taught it and wanted to find out if there was any value in it. And, I think drama school can be, I had a great time because I was sort of suddenly spending all day doing something in an elite environment that I loved and living and breathing it. But it's confusing for a while because you think these techniques are supposed to make me a better actor, but I don't necessarily think they are. And so I guess I held on to them for a while, trying to think like, which of these is useful to me? And then once you relax and go, well, I like that stuff and I like that bit, it's not scientific. And I think people who are dogmatic about acting technique are like people who are dogmatic about religion. It's not, it's snake oil really. Like it's just whatever's useful to you, And so I guess I've figured out which bits I like. And there may be crutches, there may be just ways of organizing you. It can be daunting, can't it? Like to play a very small part where you're like, I've got 3 words to hang my self-esteem on, or a very big part where you're like, I'm in every fucking scene and how do I even start to, in either of those examples and everything in between, like it's just useful to go, okay, let's just break it down. And whatever that breaking down is just a way of going, okay, just organize yourself, follow your instincts. Have somewhere to go when somebody gives you a piece of direction that you know is right, but basically rips the carpet out from your performance and you have to start again. It's nice to have some scaffolding to be like, well, I don't have to start all over again entirely. I've still got my bar lines in my script or whatever.
Scaffolding. I've heard that word before. I feel like that's a really good word, and it really places it. Like it's not the you could build stuff on the scaffolding. It's not the walls. It's you know what I mean? Like that's why it's a good image.
I once worked with a director who had a big impact on me, who had kind of quite draconian rules about things, but I never quite understood what they were. So I try and do what he taught me, but I'm not quite sure what that was. But that's good because it's like it's not scientific anyway. So I try and draw a line when I think I think of them now as bar lines. It's like when it shifts over from one bar to the other. Well, the way I kind of learned the technique was that it's when the dynamic changes for everyone in the scene. But actually, as often, it's when the temperature shifts. There's some kind of no going back from place for my character. And I just find it useful and usually I rub them out many times in the course of even reading the scene and move them.
Because they move.
Of course they move and you forget where they are anyway. It's just a starting point. And then I usually I'll do that it really depends how much time I've got to prepare and whatever. And it also sort of depends on what it is. Like if I love having plays with lots of stage directions because then you can kind of unit those. And I always forget where they are. And I usually and then I'll title the units sometimes. But, I usually get about halfway through the play and then get bored of that. And then I'll do actions within there's like a vague system of like, what's my scenic objective, all of that stuff that again, I only half learned. I never felt comfortable with when I was at drama school. But what I've learned is that by doing it, I've sort of, something is produced and it's just a way of holding your feet to the fire to read with attention and get everything you can out of the script. And it usually changes. And I never learn, like I've never done that kind of Max Stafford Clark thing of, I did work with one director at drama school again, who you had to action every beat. And then you had to physicalize each action. It was actually very useful because he was, you'd be like, what's your action on that line? And you'd be like, I intend, I interrogate. He'd be like, show me interrogate. And if you couldn't do it in a mime, he was like, that's not your action.
Whoa.
What was useful about that was like, don't choose
wishy-washy.
Yeah, do something that you can do to someone.
Yeah.
And that was really useful because it was sort of, anyway, but all of that stuff is just a way of kind of making sure you've done everything you can do so that you kind of walk into the rehearsal and then leave it all behind and just do what you were going to do anyway. Like,
and it makes me think, and I think you even said this, and other actors have said this. It's like, it's really fooling yourself. It's almost like the enemy in the beginning is also your best friend. It's like a two-sided thing, but the part that I want to talk about right here is like the enemy is yourself. Like, and you have to be doing things. You're doing something you don't even really know what it is, because a teacher, I love that. And but you know that it's doing something in battle against yourself to not let that part of your brain kind of overwhelm you. And right. So you're in this kind of system that is helping because it's not letting that enemy take over there in this very important part of the whole process, which is the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, am I getting it?
I think that's right. And I think, to answer your other question, probably over time, one does need it less. Or, I mean, basically I didn't need it at all in the beginning because I didn't know it existed. And I've gone through a process of grasping, like enjoying having technique. And I expect at some point, on some jobs, like actually, to be honest, I was thinking, that, I've just done a job where I didn't really do any of that stuff. And I don't know if that was a good thing or not, but I guess I didn't need it. Maybe I didn't ever need it, but
was it scary though? Like, or was this, did you try that because you didn't have enough time, or because you were like, well, let me see if this is possible? And was it scary?
I mean, maybe other techniques or other crutches have come in instead. So I think one of the things that's happened to me is that I kind of got to a point where I guess I gained some confidence through the success of some roles I'd played that were, for want of a better word, character roles. I don't like this distinction. The Spotlight casting directory here used to have two different sets of volumes. You were either a character actor or a leading actor. And I just think that distinction is so unhelpful. Yes. And it's still, you see in people's like Wikipedia page, like American character actor. Yeah. And like, what is that? Which actor is not playing a character? It's a specious kind of separation. Of course, you know what they mean. And actually, I've started embracing it and going, I am a character actor. I love that I'm a character actor. I love the versatility it implies. But anyway, to come back to the point, I guess I got to a point in my career where I got known for doing that thing well, transforming, and I got praise for it, and I enjoyed it, and I was like, brilliant, bring it on. Yeah. And what started to happen around then was that I started to work out how I could, what the various kind of management tools were that I needed to consistently make bold, daring, and successful choices, and to like get my choices through, or at least heard, to get my ideas onto the plateau, Yes. And so actually the work for me maybe stopped being quite so much like, how am I going to make sure that I've actioned this scene within an inch of its life? And more like, how am I going to make sure I've emailed the right people so that everybody understands what's possible if they don't just look at this headshot? And maybe, and to cut long story short, and then I think I'm slightly trying to come out the other side of that, because it's all the same thing. It is like character acting, leading acting, whatever, straight kind of kooky, whatever. It's all the same thing. You're finding a way of, that director I talked about being kind of very influential on me said, mean what you say. And I think that's like that's all you have to do, is you have to mean it. I'm suspicious of the idea that you should always do less, and that actually, do less acting, because I used to think that, and I used to be kind of hung up about the idea that, I'm basically just doing way too much all the time, and I'm running away from the truth. And I just don't think that's true. I think, give a man a mask and he'll tell you the truth. You can be just as authentic with a pair of false teeth and a wig and a wooden leg, if not more so sometimes. Finding the meeting point between, whatever you're bringing from your own experience and your intention in meaning what you say, and the character, and some kind of alchemy that I just can't describe. And I think everybody does it their own different way, and any given actor does it 5 different ways within a career as well.
I guess the real secret is to never get dogmatic about this, because when you get dogmatic about it, that's when you kind of close off all of these possibilities.
I think that's absolutely right.
But you really could get dogmatic, though. That's the thing. If you were inclined that way, because when things work, and then you think, well, everybody's got to do it like this. That's how dogmas start, I guess.
Yeah, and you can get distracted by your own shit as well. Like, I think I'm at my best when I feel well prepared. I've got good ideas to bring into the room, and then I listen to what's actually going on, and the two things meet each other. Because I'm well prepared, I'm relaxed enough to meet what's there. But it's not like, if you could have just been relaxed in the first place, you didn't need the prep. Actually, the prep adds, everybody's prep all comes and meets each other. And hopefully everybody is relaxed enough then to go, oh, wow, you've got that. I brought this. Do you see what I mean? So,
yes. But what happens when somebody's not relaxed at all and everyone else is relaxed? Or you're the only one who's relaxed? Relaxation is so important. I don't think we talk about it enough on this show. It's got to be hard to be faced with that and not know what to do. It's not your responsibility to relax someone else, is it? And as an actor, I mean, the director, I feel it is, if they're seeing somebody not relaxed. But if your partner is not relaxed, and the relaxation will help them, and that's where all of the issues are kind of coming from. Like, what do you do?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's. I don't know that. I'm wondering whether it's best to answer this question in the abstract or to try and think of an example. I mean, probably is better in the abstract. Basically, I think is that if someone else isn't relaxed, it's not your business to put a label on that and go like, that person's not relaxed. The scene would be much better if they are where they are, and you can. I wonder if I'm being honest. Because,
I want that to be true.
I am I'm talking about relaxation, but I think I worry that I know I'm quite. I guess I'm quite controlling. Like I do my fucking work, and I bring that, and I'm not afraid to sort of bring that. I bring it generous in a spirit of generosity, by the way, not in a kind of spirit of dogma. But I think sometimes I'm my own worst enemy, because that's not entirely a relaxed place to be coming from. What I had said was like, I'm doing it so that I can relax, and if someone else isn't relaxed, well, that's okay. You just work with that, right? You have to.
I guess that's ideal. And that's what you keep hearing people say. You got to work with what's in front of you. But this is why I can never act, because I'm overthinking everything, and I know exactly what's going on and wrong with the person I'm with, and I know, and I just can't get over how if they just did this, then we can get down to the scene better. And I know, and then it's totally wrong. It's totally inappropriate. It's totally unhelpful. But this kind of overthinking and the inability to face what's there is part of my problem, I think.
Well, I don't think you're alone in that. I mean, to be quite honest, I think, I mean, I really identify with that idea on some level, maybe not as critically as you've put it of your scene partner, but like to be honest with you, most rehearsal rooms that I've been in are in the first phase, a negotiation between everybody trying to find polite ways of suggesting to everybody how they should be doing it, or at least opening up and trying. I think at its best, and usually actually in my experience, in the spirit of generosity, everybody going, finding really polite ways of, or less polite ways of making the suggestion they feel will be helpful and which will unlock the scene. But that's a phase that you go through in rehearsal so that everybody's kind of had their chance to do that. And somehow in the process of doing that, you hopefully, and most of the time, will relax or maybe just figure out whose idea is best. And I feel like in the theatre, the good directors often are the people who give space to everybody and then allow the room to notice the best idea, and everybody just goes with it because it's the best. Right. And if everybody's sort of had their chance to be heard and to have their kind of little, however tightly they express it or more, some people are brilliant at it and absolutely charming, at sort of turning everybody around their vision. But it doesn't always work if it's not the best idea.
Yeah.
So if everybody is genuinely trying to present the best thing and they've got good taste, which you hope they have, then it'll be fine. And if they haven't, you're fucked. So,
and I'm sensing that the key there is time and having time. And then that brings this question then. How does somebody like you, who has over and over seen that happen with enough time, how do you go then to a television set and realize, oh my God, like you have no time? And I guess I'm assuming that this is the case across the pond. It's certainly the case here, where there isn't rehearsal. How do you just settle in and not get overwhelmed with the idea of, oh my God, if we just did a little bit of rehearsal on this and went through a very brief version of what you just said, where it's like some things are worked out in that way, where the best idea wins, or even just letting the other actors just get through their polite thing like that everything would be better. And I'm just saying that because I bet you people that haven't been in the theater don't even know that process, don't even know how good that is. And so they can deal with television in a different way than somebody from the theater can, right?
Yes. And so I think there are different things I've learned. Some, I'm not sure I should admit to this, but so one of the things I've learned is that there's a way of doing that process offline. Unfortunately, that favors the people higher up the call sheet, because if you're the lead actor, you've got the director's email and the executive producer's email. And I mean, the problem I find in television often is that there is no single decision maker. And so, what you want from a director, and often get, brilliant directors, but they're not, they're also still reporting to executive producers who maybe aren't on the set, aren't in the kind of hotel where you do a lot of that kind of stuff. And so I think managing that and knowing how you can manage upwards and sideways as an actor has been useful to me, and understanding that the more I can get myself included in the grown-up conversations about, like, it boggles my mind that actors are, that like literally everyone down to the, like every person in the crew often will have information that the actors don't have. And while some actors love that, some actors, and I love, in a way, I love walking onto a set, and it's been, the detail is extraordinary, and actually it's amazing to have that for the first time on the day, 20 minutes before you're going to do the scene, because there's something pure about that. But in other ways, so many times you find yourself going, if we just had a conversation about this last night, everybody would not be like about to sack someone feeling like, I'm going to get the sack for this because I'm going to fucking say the sofa's in the wrong fucking place. If only you'd said it last night. Did you not read the script that you wrote? Right, do you know what I mean? Like, right. So I've learned to sort of try and get myself included in that stuff wherever possible. I've learned ways of just essentially offering stuff before, and the good directors and the good writers know that, and they invite that wherever they can. And it doesn't necessarily mean a rehearsal. It can just be, another thing that drives me wild is that actors are not sent script pages in a timely fashion. Not just because you have to learn the thing, but because, that you have a response to that stuff, and sometimes it's defensive, but more often than not, it's like you're the curator of you're looking at it from your character's angle, and you might have an insight, and it doesn't have to be listened to. But if you include people in the way that you would include the makeup design, they'll have an opportunity to be like, I'm just flagging this, take it or leave it. Mm-hmm. That drives me wild. Similarly, the thing that drives me most insane is that I auditioning without a script. I guess I'm trying to learn to do this more, because in a way, in fact, I was listening to one of your guests talking about just honing in on a scene, and I thought that's a really useful thing to think about for me, because I hate not knowing what the story is, because so much of my process is about trying to see that big picture, and then it just it influences the way but I guess that does cheat one of a certain kind of different, like, first person perspective way through, which can sometimes be the most exciting work, where you're like, that person's in their own, this character's come in who's in their own, it's like, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. They're having their own story, and they walked into the movie and they walked out again. They were in it for 30 seconds, but I want to see that film, It's the most exciting. And, I guess I'm probably not going to do that much of that kind of work.
Every director, of course, will learn an infinite amount of things and make their work better if they just acted a little bit, or even took an acting class. Infinite. I mean, they really should. All of them should. Everyone should. If you're thinking about directing, just do that. But it's interesting when actors who are successful start directing. And I always want to know what they've learned from directing. Can you pinpoint a few things that your time directing has made your acting work grow in a certain way? Or maybe it's just about how you communicate with the director now after that experience.
Yeah, I think I've noticed one of the things you ask actors, or at least the two that I've heard you talking to, is what do you want from a director? I'm sure everybody has more or less the same answer. I mean, certainly mine is to be seen. I feel like my best work happens when I get out of my own way. But for that to happen, I have to feel like my offer has been noticed and appreciated. So then I can quit worrying that if only they would listen, or that they might see what I have to offer. But you also want boundaries from, I think directing is parenting. And so what you want from a director is what you want from a parent. And so you do want to be heard and seen and given space, but you also want to be given direction. And I think that's quite esoteric, isn't it? To work out what that means for each actor. And I found it terrifying, because I thought all the things that I thought made me a good actor would make me a good director. Actually, I just found it exhausting. Wow. Kind of the quality of attention you have to have on each person to work out what particular cocktail they need in order to be a good parent to them. Yeah, I'd say this glibly because I hope it's not entirely true, but what I took to saying after that experience of directing Strife was that the one thing it taught me for sure is that I'm a good actor, which, I mean, I'm not sure I'm certainly, I have a lot to learn about directing, and I found it very traumatic for the reasons I've mentioned, just holding everybody's anxieties. So it gave me a newfound respect for the bits of, so the way it's changed my approach to talking to directors is maybe a more visceral appreciation of all the plates that they're spinning, which isn't to say that one didn't have that before. And actually, by the same token, I think it's legitimate for actors, as long as it's done respectfully. I think it is legitimate for actors to want their day in court on any given thing. Basically, I think you have a right to be heard once, maybe twice. I think you have to know when to shut up. And maybe it's given me a finer tuned judgment about when to shut up. But if you ask any director I've worked with since then, I'm not sure they would agree. I guess, what else? The tools that I enjoy, the reasons I want to direct, I think I can do a lot of that as an actor, and had been and still am. And maybe it taught me like what really I'm getting a whole load of extra responsibilities that I don't enjoy, or that at least I need to learn a lot. I need a lot more experience before I will enjoy them. I sound like I'm really down on myself, and I kind of, it was a baptism of fire. I bit off a huge, hubristic kind of challenge of directing 20 actors, almost all of whom were more experienced than I was, and sort of senior actors, and this enormous play. And I'm really proud. I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of them. I'm proud that, and I'm actually weirdly coming back to the thing about where the masks you hide behind. It was one of the riskiest, in a good way, things I've done in my career, because I didn't have a technique to fall back on. I guess I had quite a lot of experience being in rehearsal rooms and clear ideas about aesthetic and a kind of devil may care daring about like trying stuff. I mean, all of which were good things, but it was terrifying as a result, because and I didn't want to lose their I felt that these actors had given me their confidence, and that I needed to deserve that. And I think if I'd relaxed, and you come back to the point you made at the start, I think was very smart. If I'd been less attuned to a sense of their disappointment and just been a bit more arrogant, I might have been more relaxed and probably come across as less arrogant as a result. So I think in a funny kind of way, arrogance is the arrogance of youth, or of not knowing. So you said like all directors should take acting classes, but what might happen to many of them is they get huge crisis of confidence and lose, like some of the best directors are unfortunately quite unpleasant to work for. It's true. And I don't like that. That's true. My favorite directors are wonderful to work for. They're everything, but like you can break it by trying to be too empathic with the actors, I guess. I remember when I was working at a certain theatre, I remember thinking like, it's like there's a point at which the assistant directors get taken aside by the directors and told, you're at a point in your career where you need to stop fraternizing with the actors, as though there should be some kind of film between the two. Wow. And I remember thinking, that's such fucking bullshit. But in a funny kind of way, I understood it a little bit. I mean, I don't think that's true, by the way, but I sort of understood a little bit that we're not, directing, that you can't be everybody's pal. It's like coming back to the parenting thing.
Yes.
You have to be the parent, and you want to be a parent who listens and who, can see things from I mean, that sounds a bit patronizing. I don't even mean like parent that is somehow superior, but it is a kind of parental role, or because you have to be the one that is going, everything's going to be okay, at the same time as, and I don't know where we're going. And like, it's mythic, the ability to hold that, to give people the space to be like, we're all going on a journey and none of us knows where the end is, which is the kind of director I want it to be, but also to give everyone confidence that it's going to be fine. Those two things pull in completely opposite directions, So like as an actor, like the opposite is true. As an actor, you want to feel that you have complete freedom to run, but that if you're going off a cliff, they'll stop you. And that those things are also contradictory, you know?
Yes. That's why this is a brilliant analogy, the parenting analogy, because when I think about, like, I've often been kind of in awe of my parents who didn't ever beat me. They never really even yelled at me that much, but I was a good boy, and I was trying to figure out why, you know? And it was because I wanted to make them happy. If a director can put out this energy of making the actors want to make them happy, but it can't be this kind of, it can't be a friend, like you're saying, because that energy is kind of wrong, because you make your friends happy easily in this kind of goofy way. But you make your parents happy in this other way that's much more profound, and it's much more proud in a way, or something like that.
I definitely recognize that, and I think it's really problematic because it can lead to massive abuse of power.
Yes,
and it does, right? So,
yes.
But I definitely recognize that dynamic, and there's a sort of need to be loved, actually. And actually loved in the deepest sense, loved for your failures as well as your success. You know, it is absolutely for me analogous with what you crave from a parent, to be recognised and loved and celebrated, and then also like make them proud. You know,
yes,
which requires you to trust their taste. So often working with someone for the first time, you know, you're taking a risk because you're like, well, I don't even know if I like your taste. And then in the early part, you know, if you're lucky enough to have rehearsal, or even in the early part of the shoot, you might be kicking against it because you're like, fuck, I don't know if I even like this person's taste. So to carry on trusting can be really problematic and not always rewarding. Like sometimes you do trust, and that's when, you know, you get burned because you look at the thing and you're like, I did trust that and I don't like the product. That's painful.
As a way to talk about the tragedy of Macbeth, has Shakespeare training been paying dividends to you all these years in your other work? Talk to me about that, if it has.
I haven't really had Shakespeare training.
Oh.
You know, we did Shakespeare among other authors, and I suppose the only thing that was particularly specific to Shakespeare, although it's also true of other plays in blank verse, is some, you know, work around how to handle iambic pentameter, but, you know, verse meter. And a lot of that, to be honest, to me comes naturally. Like I had that before I studied it because it's music. It's just a musical. By the way, I mean, the clearest thing I can say about acting is, for me, acting is musical. It's so all of the things about, you know, we've been talking about instinct and about expression and about meter or rules, or, you know, whether it's units or bar lines. I don't have a much formal training as a musician, but I guess I am one, and I've, you know, been successful in musicals and stuff, and I trust that I am a musician. But I think of acting as musical. You have to be able to deliver the notes. You have to be in command of your instrument, but you also have to have this thing called expression, which nobody can really teach you. So coming back to Shakespeare, I don't really, you know, I went to RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and people talk about being classically trained, but actually, you know, you learn a bunch of stuff that's applicable or it's not to any given text. So I guess the answer is no. And I haven't actually done that much Shakespeare. Weirdly, I did play Macbeth. Was one of my first jobs out of drama school, was production of Macbeth at a Fringe Theatre in London, directed by Will Oldroyd, who went on to make an extraordinary film called Lady Macbeth, which has nothing to do with Macbeth.
Yes.
You might have seen it. It's a beautiful film.
Yes.
He directed this production in a theatre called the Union Theatre under a railway arch in London, in Southwark, very near, you know, between the National and the Globe, just down the road from the Old Vic. We did this production of Macbeth, in which the Time Out said, Carvel perhaps overdoes the campy Caligula-isms and manic eye-rolling. And I think, to be fair, they were right. But as a consequence, I know that play very well. And what I want to say about Joel's Macbeth is that having seen it now twice, I saw it this morning for the second time, it's extraordinary how he has found a language which is both cinematic in a way that recalls the great days of cinema and theatrical. And that's a great magic trick, actually. I'm really proud to be in it. It's a really beautiful film. I guess I've grown used to, maybe lazily used to, taking on roles where I do have quite a lot of voice, I suppose, in the process of developing the piece. And then so to go and step onto the set with, to have to learn that, to relearn what I know all along, which is they're just people, But for me, kind of flying over to LA onto the Warner Brothers lot to work with Joel Coen and Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington and all these other kind of movie actors, it's intimidating, and that is not a place of relaxation. So although I may have felt some relaxation about the material, which I think I did not feel a sense of relaxation about quite what the etiquette was about how to have my voice heard. And at the same time, a kind of damned if I'm not going to have my fucking voice heard, I'm reaching, you know what I mean? Like, so sort of trying to find the way of being relaxed and it's going to be okay. And luckily they're all, artists. And, but I think it took me a while on that job, even though we had 6 weeks of rehearsal, keen to sort of, but I didn't, I didn't quite know what shape that rehearsal was taking. Well, and just knowing quite what the parameters were and how to, when to speak and when not, and how to get your ideas in, which is the great thing I've learned over these years, is like, what is the appropriate way, when to speak, when to shut up. I didn't know that on that job. And so that was the learning curve for me. And so it was nothing to do with the Shakespeare, really. It was all to do with like how to bring my best game without getting in anyone's way, but without letting myself down as well.
Did you eventually let your voice be heard, though? Did you find a way?
Yeah, I think so. What I loved about working on that film as well is that the whole team, I mean, Ethan was not involved in that, and I didn't meet Ethan, so I don't know, but like, their team that they've done so many movies with go as a kind of troupe, and they're all artists, and friends, and like that speaks volumes, that people. I remember a director, sadly dead now, once said, like, I looked down a CV to see whether an actor has worked with the same director twice, and if not, I wonder why not. Whoa. And I think it's maybe a little bit unfair because, like people have to keep moving, whatever, but there's some truth in that. But, the idea that people choose to work together again is just that, that speaks volumes about the who they are. And they're also fucking talented, they're just brilliant. And I loved working with the whole team. Like part of my favorite part of the process is always working with costume and makeup designers. And, partly because that's a crutch that I've learned, as we've spoken about, I've learned to kind of lean on a little bit. And I guess I'm good. I find that I express myself through those by dressing up, that's for me, that's part of the fun of this stuff. But also because it's a kind of, to your previous question about how you rehearse when you're rehearsing on television or film, like sometimes the rehearsal is the costume fittings. You can make choices there. You can get onto the same page. You can mine those people quite practically for information. Like, can you just please give me an advanced look at the schedule so I know what to learn first? And they'll almost always go like, don't tell anyone you got it from me. Every actor always does that. But also on a more esoteric level, you can kind of start to go like, well, I've never met Joel, I taped for him or whatever, but I'm, now in these conversations, and maybe I meet the first day on day one, but there's a lot going on for him and I'm not but then like I'm in the trailer with Mary's Offers talking about costume, and I'm starting to like imbibe, a sense of like, oh, this is what the film is. And then when I come to talk to Joel and get the same information from him, I'm already up to speed a little bit. And also I can start to I can test the boundaries a bit with those people. So,
it's like a primer.
Getting a primer. How about this? And going, I don't think that's going to fly.
Okay,
well, why not? And,
What about it being black and white and it being square? Like, does this stuff come into the actor's mind where they have to keep that in mind for some reason? Or is that just like totally outside of and did you know that it was going to be that way?
Yes, I did know. And some directors are really kind of superstitious about actors not seeing the monitor and stuff. And to be honest, I think I'm quite good at having an outside eye anyway. I don't necessarily need to see it on the screen, but it is sometimes really useful to see because, to my earlier point about just being included, sometimes, you can direct yourself if someone's like, just come and have a look. And you're like, oh, that's what, it's the message wasn't getting through.
Right.
I think often actors are heard or seem to be resisting a note when the note is just not clear.
Yeah.
Yes. Or they can't hear it for whatever. But like actors always want to hear the note. They always want to take the note because they want to please people. Yes. Every actor wants to please the director.
Yes.
And so if they're resisting, it's sometimes because they can't hear it, or and that might be because it's not clear, or it might be because they are so sure that what they're doing is better. And so sometimes if you just like, come and have a look, they'll be like, oh, he's right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you asked a much more interesting question about black and white. And I guess I found it really useful. Joel said to me that at one stage, I was sort of asking him about the aesthetic, and he said that I wanted to be sculptural, and I found that very inspiring and useful. And so I sometimes think that quite abstract things can help you. I work with animals quite a lot, like animal study type stuff. And, again, it's just a tool. But I think the reason I find it useful is that it's not like I'm going to be like, how can I be more, this wasn't my animal for Banquo, by the way, but like hawk-like. I just did a job where my animal was a hawk. And it's not like I'm going like, how can I be more beaky in this scene? But the accessing that image is both the vocabulary I might have with a makeup designer to be like, okay, this is the image, and how about we kind of just push it in that direction, see where we come out. But also because you're just activating a different part of your creativity. And so sometimes, understanding that, actually wonderfully, when I got offered the role, which I taped for, they sent like a kind of mood board of some artwork, some production artwork, and that was really helpful. And it was just because it goes in somewhere and it comes out as something, and then that thing might not be right, and then otherwise, I think it's dangerous to be too eager to please. If you're just trying to please, another thing I think is true is that, and for your listeners who might be directors thinking about actors think good directing is like, I've never had a satisfying experience where the ideas were the directors universally. And I think that people who don't work with actors often think that what the actors do is deliver the director's vision. And maybe that speaks for certain arrogance, and maybe it speaks to a kind of difference of culture. I don't know what it says about me, but it's only ever satisfying when it feels like a collaboration, which isn't to say that they actually haven't, actually that film, for example, is kind of storyboarded within each other's life, I'm sure. And Joel works with a storyboard artist who's phenomenally talented, and, everything's so, and he's an editor. So he, everything is absolutely planned and so on, but it has to feel like a collaboration. And when it doesn't, that's when, personally speaking, like my hackles go up, and that's when I start getting in my own way and everybody else's way. So like the shortest way to get the best out of everybody in any team, surely, is to sort of make them feel included. And I think that's a kind of truism.
I had like a revelation last night listening to Matilda, the cast album, and I listened to The Smell of Rebellion. You know, like most, I've said it on the show before, like most great shows, people say you have to see this, and I ignored them. But so listening to this, I got a little emotional listening to that song, man, because the revelation was this. It was like, I was seeing two things at the same time, kind of, in this revelation, which was this amazing song and lyrics and your interpretation of this. And I was thinking, like, this is the melding of the two here. It was kind of upsetting because I was thinking, the only way you get this is out of good material, right? I mean, like, the only way you're activated to this level as an actor is when the material is good. I want that to not be true. I want to have examples where you see somebody doing something amazing in bad material. I don't have any. Do you? I don't have. It makes me sad about this art in a way. But it also makes me overjoyed because of people coming together, you responding to this material, you injecting it with whatever you injected it with, and me being able to experience it. And obviously, people in 3 different versions of this show experienced it. But I want you to just reflect on this a little bit about, is it that the material has to be amazing like this for you to bring out your best? I think that's true for me. I think I have to feel excited by the material. And I think that's a limitation, because I do think there are actors who don't need that, or at least not at the outset. And maybe they're more trusting of the fact that maybe it'll be good, maybe it won't, but they'll do. So I think that, be more specific about this. For what excites me is seeing a germ of something that is interesting to me, and then the process that feels like a collaboration of working that up into something that feels like the meeting point of that, you know. Yes. But
I think it is possible to burn with a kind of, I'm going to say, truth in an intensity maybe that is so alive that it doesn't matter what you're. So I'm basically, I think it's a bit abstract, but I think I disagree with you. I think it is absolutely possible to polish a turd and to elevate. I mean, you can definitely elevate stuff.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy this is true.
There has to be something there, right? There has to be something that you want to tell, and then you can work with that. And because otherwise there'd be no point doing most of what we make. And indeed, believe me, I often think there is no point doing most of it. You know, I hate most things I see.
Yes, me too.
In theatre, like, unless on the screen you can just switch off. But you know, I'm so massively resentful of my time in a theatre most of the time.
Me too.
But that's why it's amazing when it's good.
Yes.
Because there's no feeling like it when you're like, you would not rather be anywhere else.
Yes.
Anyway, but coming back to the point, I do think it's possible to elevate stuff, and I do think it's rare, but it is possible that somebody is so interesting that, you know, and you know, I'm not going to name them because it would be embarrassing, but people I've come across in my life, they're rare, but there are those people. We've all got a couple where you're like, I would watch that person read the phone book.
Yeah.
Because there's something going on there.
Yeah.
They are their own material, maybe. I don't know.
But would you feel that way if the first thing you saw them in was the phone book?
Yeah, well, maybe, because, I mean, the person I'm thinking of. Yeah, I mean, I also think I've seen the person I'm thinking of do work that isn't interesting. So it's not infallible. It's not like everything they do is amazing. I just mean that there's a, you know, and I think really, like, I would like to be more of that kind of an actor who doesn't need to, I think I'm slightly arrogant about the choices I make of what I do. I back myself and I trust my taste. And because I know that I need that germ that you're talking about, I need to believe on some level in what I'm doing. But there are actors who will be like, it's a job, I'll go in and are still fucking amazing because they're so committed to something that it's like, you're watching, because on some level, good acting is just about being alive, and you used the phrase tricking yourself. I don't know if it's a trick, but art is about refracting the world, holding the mirror up to nature, isn't it? You're supposed to be more real than real, which is a paradox. And so there are those actors who kind of carry that inside them. They're not getting it from the material. They're getting it from somewhere else, channeling it. And for me, like, I need the channel of the material most of the time to kind of, it's not that it's like you're channeling the material. It's like, that's the stepping stone to where I need to kind of get to burn that brightly and be that kind of intense, I guess.
Bertie Carvel, thank you so much.
Thanks. It's been a real pleasure.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.